People of Reddit, what do you miss about the COVID lockdown period? Not feeling guilty for never leaving my home and all of the quality time my girlfriend and I spent together. The background noises being switched off, no traffic, no planes in the sky, no horns blaring. Also the sense of community it brought with neighbors checking in on each other and if anyone needed anything. In my town, all the restaurants literally turned into like grocery stores where you could get cooked food, but also things like pay, oil, flour, raw chicken, raw burgers, etc. The wild animals exploring cities being all like,
"Where'd the noisy apes go?"
On turkeys everywhere. Yes, we live in a suburban area and saw occasional wildlife, but I started seeing animals I'd never seen around the neighborhood before. Deer, foxes, all kinds of birds. It was crazy. Actually crazy how quick wildlife would fill up the cities if we disappeared. I actually saved a lot of money. I finished paying off my school debt and saved some. Unfortunately, inflation caught up, and now I'm playing jump between the red and black. We were also given a lot of money from the government, which helped my family out a whole lot. All that money is finally pretty much gone these days, though. Not having a cold for 2 years. I've still managed to avoid getting COVID, but since returning to in-person work, I've gotten just about every other cold under the sun. I haven't gone 2 solid weeks without a cough and a runny nose in the past 6 months, and the resulting sick leave culture that's coming out of the pandemic. I can't speak for other areas, but I live in a fairly liberal city with mandatory sick leave, and people seem to take the concept of stay home if you're sick a lot more seriously now. Plus, there's been a decently sized culture of people who wear masks if they have the sniffles or a cold, and I love that it seems so obvious now. Even this hard Trump, who was a regular at my old workplace, was grateful when I told him I was recovering from a cold, so I was wearing a mask so I didn't spread it. I suspect that my lack of using the word COVID had something to do with that though. The empty roads. My God, the empty roads. Don't forget the cheap gas. Driving was the best during lockdown. The fastest cannonball runs, maybe forever, were set during lockdown because of the lack of traffic in it. Autocorrect. I would cycle at midnight, no cops to uphold the lockdown where I am, down the middle of main roads and the highway. It was like being in 28 Days Later, a good version of it. No traffic, no people, lots of foxes and fox cubs playing in the road. Commute of 23 miles took me just about 30 miles or so. Now I'm back to 60, 90 minutes depending on how terrible people want to drive that day. One of the odd bits of information I ran across was that there wasn't much of a change in traffic-related fatalities from 2019-2020. In my state, it actually went up by a couple in April of those years. The obvious reason was that while there were fewer people on the roads, the ones who drive like absolute shitheads had carte blanche and so were more likely to die in a single car crash. The silence, especially in the first days when the lockdown started, the whole world around me got silent. No more cars, no machines in the distance, no airplanes flying above, just sound of nature and a gentle breeze. I loved it. In July 2020, it dawned on me that there were practically no airplanes in the sky. I ventured out to get a night. Sky shot I'd been dreaming about. Hops. I read. It's Sazero John Thrain La 51. Jew Page Edit. Thanks for the kind words. I have to add a caveat that you can't see the night sky like this with a naked eye. It requires long exposure photography. The breeze is what stuck out to me. I was going out at like 6 a.m. for morning trail runs, and it was beautiful how quiet it was and how good the breeze felt. And that breeze being the only thing I could hear, I miss that shit. Everyone was so quiet. In my area, at least. To those who have trashy and rowdy neighbors, did they stay quiet or was it business as usual? The reduction in air and noise pollution. So true. There is a hill nearby my house. After lockdown, I went up the hill and noticed mountains in the distance that I never saw before. I was hoping it would last a lot longer so we could prove that remote work was the future. Apparently 2.5 years wasn't enough for my boomer boss, and now it's back to 5-day grind. Honestly, when it all started and we were all making bread and didn't really know what was going to happen, I hate to admit it, but it was kind of exciting. Completely agree. 2020, one part of the pandemic I found quite depressing, but in 2020, when everything was going crazy, it felt exciting. There was camaraderie, and everyone was trying new hobbies. Yeah, I already had a fairly large garden, but I made it even larger. I didn't go grocery shopping for like 10 months. My garden produced everything I needed for 2 people, and I had enough staples like salt, bags of rice, beans, lentils, slices, etc. that I was able to get by just fine. Preserved so much food, had like 30 leaves of kimchi and sauerkraut, so many jars of pickled vegetables, and dehydrated a bunch of stuff. Even built a rainwater collection system, so if things got really bad, we'd be fine. That was super fun. The classes, the recipe sharing, knitting, reading, painting. I started a damned Etsy shop. It was great. Commuting, reduced to none, 100 minutes on the occasional trips to the office, taking 10 minutes instead of an hour. I do miss empty roads edit. Well, there goes my mailbox and my most upvoted comment. Thanks strangers for the internet point. My company had record years in 2020 and 21. So naturally, we are being told to come back to the office. Geniuses. While I was working more because I could just jump online in the evening and work another hour or two, I much prefer working from home than an office. The commute gives me so much stress and anxiety going to and from. I save more time to myself and my family, not having to drive in. My German Shepherd boy, Bjorn, died almost 2 years ago. Got to spend all day every day with him in 2020. Both my dog and the family dog passed within 3 weeks of each other in April 2020. That effing sucked by one of my brothers. A fellow dog lover said, "I hope this doesn't sound awful, but the silver lining is that you got to spend his last days at home with him." No commuting fuel costs, basically a 300 a month pay rise. Everyone was just get what you can done. Finished university during COVID, and last semester was like, fuck it, I'm passing everybody on the final. We're all dying. Have a great summer. I also finished my degree during COVID and got to say, I think that's what retirement will feel like for me. School was relatively easy and only had to be on Zoom like 1 to 2 times a week. Worked out at home with my roommates. Started playing guitar, painting, reading again. I guess I just finally had time to enjoy my hobbies again. I miss it sometimes. The air smelt and felt so much more cleaner due to less traffic around where I live. Also, it was so much quieter due to less people being around. I think about this constantly because I would go for these walks in the beginning of spring and could smell every new flower and plant. I couldn't believe it. And I knew it was new because I don't drive, so I already walk everywhere and know what it smells like. Having the excuse to not go anywhere. We lived in an introvert's world for a blissful year. I'm a homebody, so it didn't bug me one bit. No one expected me to go anywhere. It was nice. But being left the hell alone. It was the healthiest I've ever been. It was the wealthiest I've ever been. It was the happiest I've ever been. It was the most freedom I've ever enjoyed. It was much easier to do my job, working from home. I saved a fortune on gas. I got ample sleep. I enjoyed hobbies and started new ones. My social life actually improved because living in a duplex, my closest friends lived in the other unit and also worked from home, so we were free to hang out at will, never having to worry about or be disappointed by our schedules or the hassle of making arrangements. My girlfriend at the time stayed with me for lockdown, never left, and now we're getting married. I know many people had a tough time, and I know I had a very privileged lockdown experience. But I feel like it is my life's ambition to return to some form of the sweet awesomeness of lockdown. My husband being home. It was so nice. We went on bike rides with our daughter almost daily. Just rest, honestly. It was the first time in a lot of people's lives where they weren't expected to work or do anything. Just live. It was nice. Obviously not everyone had the same experience. I was working retail during it too. I was mainly aiming for the real lockdown where nothing but supermarkets were open, hence my job was closed. But I see everyone who went through hell then and are still going through it now with little to no thanks or relief. I'm sorry. Thank you for your service to the world when we needed it most, if you were working during the time. Even if you weren't, I wish everyone gets the pay raise, new job at they deserve. If no one's told you, you're doing a great job. Happy and healthy New Year to everyone. Right, I actually got on a totally normal and healthy schedule, naturally. Low anxiety, felt really good for a change. I miss that so much. I wish I was considered an essential worker. I had school and worked in 3 different departments at a grocery store doing cart pushing, janitorial and cashier. If anything, I felt I was worked harder than pre- and post-pandemic times. Open highways on the way to and from work. Felt I was about to burn out, then lockdown happened. Managed to finally chill, probably the best few months of my life. Visitor restrictions at the hospital where I work. I'm a nurse in OB. We saw such a huge increase in breastfeeding success rates, maternal well-being from all the rest, and partners bonding so much more at the birth. So much said to moms and partners being able to exclusively bond and rest for the few days after birth. Miss those days already so much. People being kind and supportive to each other. It didn't last long, but it was nice while it did. For that short while at the beginning, the we are all in this together vibe felt nice. Time with my infant. I had just returned to work after a 10-week unpaid maternity leave. I cried constantly, especially when pumping in the office because I missed my baby so much. I was so angry and resentful that I had to return to work that early. But then a few weeks later, COVID hit and we started teleworking. I was home for the entire first year of my baby's life. In as those few weeks back, I could breastfeed instead of pumping. I could hold my baby for contact naps during meetings. I could take breaks throughout the day to play with her and cuddle her. I didn't miss any milestones. I would rather I didn't have to work at all. Certainly balancing work and childcare was stressful, but it was better than before where I barely saw her on weekdays. I'm sad my next kid won't get that same time with me. I feel like I got a taste of what everyone else in the world with proper family leave policies have, and it made me even sadder we don't have that here in the US. No social obligations, I'm a colossal introvert. It was 4 months into COVID before I looked up one day and said, I'd like to hang out with some people. Stores cleaning and sanitizing surfaces. Also people not being on top of you when you check out. The rise and fall of Tiger King. I was an essential, so I never experienced a lockdown. I guess you can say I missed the lockdown because the only thing that changed in my life during pandemic was never getting a day off. Nothing was locked down for me. Sleeping till noon. Nothing was a nurse. Got free McDonald's, got free Subway, got free gas at times just for being in scrubs. Roads were empty, lines in stores were dead, everything was faster. But I spent 15-hour shifts. Watching mothers speak over tablets to their children their final fucking word. I saw the elderly essentially choke to death. I saw the young fall lower than dirt and never recover. My mama bear died. Nurses around me becoming patients or quitting. I became a victim because no maskers flooded our hospitals, fought us caring for them. Then I failed out and left so many people to die. Nothing will make the nightmares of this fucking disease stop for me. I will die remembering the loss and the worst humanity has to offer. Edit. Thank you all for the awards and kind words, but please save them for health workers who kept their jobs through and after the height of the pandemic. I failed as a newbie nurse. Seniors and colleagues who were stronger than me are still there. Those people are the actual backbone of most hospitals and definitely deserve your praise more than I. There's some in the comments under. They're your heroes, friend. Yep, everyone else here clearly doesn't work in healthcare. I'm a doctor. After work, if I'd be in scrubs, people looked at me like a leper. It's true that some store restaurants let me skip the line, but that's it. The amount of increased workload, stress, uncertainty, and death was terrible. There were no positives. We couldn't even de-stress because seeing other people would increase our risk of contracting COVID, which would lead to possibly missing work and overloading our colleagues. COVID sucked, lockdown sucked. People have even more distrust of physicians as a result of it. All of it, minus all the dying people. I miss the camaraderie and the feeling that we're all in this together. People made cards, opened their windows to sing, helped to deliver groceries, had socially distant dance parties in their driveways, and did whatever they could to help each other and keep their spirits up. Now we're all back to being vindictive and not caring what happens. ATA, I do acknowledge that these things didn't happen everywhere to everyone, and for those of you who went through hell and lost people, I'm truly sorry for what you went through. I just tried to find a little bit of good during the lockdown.